Hey guys, in this video or this series of videos, we're going to jump headfirst into the Symfony 4 PHP framework, which is an incredibly powerful framework, and it actually starts off as a micro framework, and then you can scale it as you see fit. So you can use it as you can use it for microservices, APIs, monolithic web apps, console apps, backends for like JavaScript applications, whether it's React or Angular, vanilla JavaScript, whatever it may be. So we're going to go ahead and build a CRUD app, which is an application that can create, read, update, and delete a resource, in our case articles, and we're going to use MySQL. We're going to use the Doctrine ORM to interact with our database, and we're going to use the Twig template engine for our views. All right, so I encourage you guys to follow along with me because there's quite a bit of code and there's quite a bit of just concepts, and I think that you'll get the best experience by doing it along with me rather than just watching it. And you should be able to take what you've learned and apply it to build your own stuff. All right, now if you ask me which PHP framework you should learn, it's going to be either Laravel or Symfony. And Laravel is actually part of it's built off of Symfony components. Laravel is much easier to learn in my opinion, but it also abstracts a lot of things out. Okay, so what that means is that you can type in commands and it'll just do stuff behind the scenes that you need to be done, and it's great for rapid development, but a lot of times you really don't understand what actually is happening. With Symfony, it's a more difficult framework, but it teaches you more, and not just about Symfony, about just PHP, about just coding in general, about application structure, things like that. So it's a really good framework to learn. So what we'll be doing is building this right here, which is just like I said, a CRUD application for articles. We'll be using Bootstrap to make it look nice. And you can see I have just a table of article titles, and this is coming from MySQL. And we can go to a route where it'll show the single article. We can edit the articles. So if I put an exclamation here and update, we can edit it. We can delete them. And of course, we can add them. We'll just say test article. All right, so we can create them as well. So very simple application. The application itself is nothing special, but it's the fundamentals and the things that you're going to learn that will allow you to continue on and build your own stuff. All right, so that's what we'll be doing, guys. I hope you enjoy it, and hopefully you can follow along. All right, so let's get started. All right, guys, so we're going to take a couple minutes to do some setup. We're going to be using Composer, which is a dependency manager for PHP. That's what we're going to use to set up Symfony. That's what we're going to use to install packages. It's basically your NPM for PHP. Now, if you're on Windows, you can just download the installer. That's what I did. I already have it installed. Go ahead and run that. If you're on Mac, you can use Homebrew. If you're on Linux, you can use your package manager. So get that set up. And then as far as my environment, I'm using Xampp, which has an Apache server, PHP, MySQL. We will be using MySQL. There is a dev server that comes with Symfony, but you're going to need to have MySQL installed if you want to follow along. So I think Xampp or just a native LAMP stack is the best option here. So once you get those set up, we're going to go to the server, which in Xampp is the htdocs folder. So I'm on Windows, so it's going to be in my C drive, Xampp, and then htdocs, and we're going to generate the application here. So rather than go into the folder, I'm going to open it up in a terminal, which I'm using git bash. Okay, I'm using Windows, and I wouldn't suggest using the regular Windows command line. Git bash is a really easy to use tool that gives you a bash terminal. You could also use the Linux subsystem or Commander or any of the other options. Let me make this bigger. So if you have Composer installed correctly, you should be able to run Composer and see a screen like this where it gives you all the different commands. So what we want to do is generate our Symfony application, and we can do that by saying Composer create project or create dash project. Specify that this is a Symfony application. It's a skeleton application, and then we want to name it, and I'm just going to call this Symph Art, okay, for Symfony articles, and we're going to run that, and that will actually create the Symph Art folder inside of our htdocs, okay, and it'll generate all of the Symfony folders and files, which isn't much to begin with. Like I said, it starts as a micro framework, so there's really not a lot to it, but you can build onto it and you can scale it. Alright, so now that's all set up, and you can see there is a dev server that you can run, but we're not going to do that since we're using Xampp. Next thing we want to do is we want to set up a virtual host. So we want to set up a server name, because right now you'll see if I go to HTTP localhost, which is my Xampp server, and I go to, what did I call it, Symph Art, we're just going to get a directory listing. The actual front-facing application is in public, so if I go to public, then we'll be able to see the app. Now, of course, we don't want to go to this, so I'm going to just create a virtual host with a server name or a domain name. So to do that, we just go to our Apache folder, which if you're using Xampp, it's in the Xampp folder, Apache. Then we want to go to conf, extra, and then the vhost file right here. And I'm just going to open it with Sublime Text, and then go to the bottom here, and you can see we have these virtual host examples. We're just going to copy one of these, and we're going to get rid of the comments here, and then all we need inside here is the document root and the server name. So I'm going to get rid of everything else, and then just uncomment these. And the document root is going to be in the htdocs, and it's going to be in the Symph Art, and then we want the public folder. And then for the server name, we're going to call it symphart.test, like that, and save. Okay, now there's one other file we need to edit, and that's the host file. Since I'm on Windows, what I need to do is open up Notepad as an administrator. If you don't run it as administrator, you won't be able to save the host file. So you want to go to File, Open, and then just navigate. If you're on Windows, it'll be in your Windows System 32, Drivers, etc, or etc, and then just choose to see all files and open the host file. Alright, and then we just want to put in an entry, so 127001, and then symphart.test. Okay, we'll save that and close it up. And then in order for that to take effect, you need to restart Apache. So with Xampp, we can just go down to the little panel here and just go to Apache stop. We'll have to verify it, and then just go back and start it up again. Alright, so now I should be able to go to HTTP symphart.test. And there we go. So there's our application. Now I'm going to open this application in VS Code. So I'm going to cd into Symph Art, and let's go ahead and just run code dot, which will open it up in VS Code. And you don't have to use VS Code. You can use whatever editor you want. I'll upgrade this later. And our application is now over here on the side, and you can see it's very small. Like I said, it starts as a micro framework. We have just a controller folder with nothing in it. We have a var, our vendors, config. So it's very small to begin with. Now, since I'm using Xampp, we need to actually add a .htaccess file into the public folder. So I'm going to say new file .htaccess. And this is the only thing that I'm actually just going to copy and paste in. And you can get this from the code in the description. Let me just grab this real quick. And it's just a general htaccess file. That's not it. Okay, so just a general htaccess file where we're seeing if the mod rewrite module is there. If it is, we want the rewrite engine on so we can rewrite URLs. And we just have a couple different rewrites here, and you can see there's some comments. You don't need these comments, but it just tells you what each thing does. So it's pretty generalized. So I'm going to save that, and close that up. Alright, so next thing we want to do is we want to create a controller. Okay, so remember this is going to be a CRUD application for articles. So we're going to create article controller.php. Okay. And then of course we want our PHP tags, and we want a namespace of app/controller. Alright, and let me just show you the documentation because you may want to follow along with that, especially if you get stuck. And the documentation is really good. There's just a lot of it. So right now if we go to, let's see, routing or setup. Okay, we already did that. This is to run the dev server using Git. What do I want here? Routing. So right here, no, that's not it either. Getting started. Yeah, so right here is an example of a controller. This is a lucky controller for generating a number, just a random number, but you can see that there's a namespace. We also want to bring in the response package so that we can just return a response to the browser. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. So we'll say use Symfony /components or component /http foundation/response. So we're just bringing in different parts of the framework that we can use for certain things. This needs a semicolon. So now what we want to do is create a class for our controller. So let's say class article controller, and we're going to create a public function. So we're going to create what's called a method. A method is just a function inside of a class, and we're going to call it index. And then from here, let's just go ahead and return a new response. Return new response, and we can put anything in here. We can put HTML tags, so go ahead and do that. And we can put a body tag. And this is just to give you an example. I'm not going to keep this. And we'll just say hello. Okay, now in order for us to see this, we need to set up a route. And there's a couple ways to set up routes with Symfony. One is to go to the config and then the routes YAML file, this YAML file. And there's already an example route in here. I'm just going to uncomment. So this is the route name index. This is the path, which is the home page or the landing page. And then it's basically saying it's looking at the default controller, and then it's looking at the index method. Well, we don't want the default controller. We want the article controller and the index method. And if we save that, let's put this over here, and let's see. Let's go back here and reload. And now we just see hello. So you can see that this has linked that route to the home route to this function. Alright, so that is one way to do it, but I wouldn't suggest that. I would suggest using annotations. It makes things much easier and much more condensed. So I'm going to just comment this route back out. And if I do that and I reload, it's just going to reload the default page again. Now, to use annotations, we need to install it with Composer. So I'm going to open up my terminal, my integrated terminal, and say Composer require annotations. And while that's going on, we can go up here and we need to bring it in. So let's say use Symfony /component /routing /annotation /route. Okay, so that will allow us to use annotations. Now we also want to be able to specify methods like get or post or put, so we can limit the type of methods that the functions or that the routes can take or accept. So for that, we're going to say use use, and then it's Sensio / bundle / framework extra bundle / configuration / method. Okay, so that will allow us to specify or restrict certain methods. So let's go to our index right here, our index function, and to set up an annotation we want to put in a comment like this, and then we want to do an @ symbol and then route, and then specify the route we want, which is just /. Alright, so that should actually work. Let's save it and let's reload. And there we go. So now instead of putting it in a separate routes file, we can simply specify the route right above the method, okay, right above the function. Now if we want to specify like this route should only take GET requests, then we can say method, and we can pass in here GET. Okay, if we wanted it to accept GET and POST, we could do GET POST like that, put, delete, or whatever it is we want. But this should just take a GET request. So if I save that, that should still work. Alright, now obviously this, we don't want to just send a response with inline HTML like this. We want to load a template, okay? So we're going to use the Twig template engine. So let's go down here. Oh man, it's doing this again. I hate when it does this. I can't clear this out. Let me just open up a new terminal. So we're going to say composer require Twig. Okay, and that will set up the Twig template engine. And then what we want to do is bring that in. So let's go up here and let's say use Sensio / bundle / framework bundle / or I'm sorry, framework, no, that's right, and then controller / controller. And we need to actually now take our article controller and extend the base controller. So we want to say extends controller like that. Okay, and now we should be able to render a Twig template. So I'm just going to comment this out, and we'll go down here, and we want to now return, let's say return this render, and then we want to pass in the template we want to render, which I'm going to put inside of a folder called articles, and then it's going to be called index.html.twig. Okay, that's the file name extension is you're going to want .html.twig. So let's save that, and now let's go over here into templates. And you can see there's already a base Twig template here, which is like our layout, and I'll show you how we can extend that in a second. But let's create a folder in templates called articles. And inside articles, we're going to create a file called index.html.twig. And in here, let's just put in an h1 and we'll say articles. So we'll save it, and now if I go and reload, something's wrong. Attempted to load class controller from namespace. Let's see. Must have some kind of typo here. Framework bundle controller. Oh, this shouldn't be Sensio. This should be Symfony. There we go. So now you can see it's loading that Twig template. Now, if we look at the source code here, you'll see it's just an H1. It's not using the layout. There's no HTML and body tags or anything like that. So what we want to do is extend this base layout right here. So you can see that it has it has blocks. So it has one for the title, the style sheets, the body, and JavaScripts. so we can extend those blocks in our template. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and first of all, at the top here, we're going to use our Twig tags. So this is going to be some curly braces and percent signs, and we're going to say extends, and then the layout we want to extend, which is base.html.twig. And then if we want to have a title for this particular page, we can go ahead and use the title block. So we'll say block title, and then we just want to do end block, and in here we can put a title. So we'll just say Symph art articles. So that'll be the title, and then we want the body, so we can just say block body, and let's wrap this H1 and say end block like that, and we'll just tab this over and save. Let's reload, and now you can see that we have the title up here, and if we look at the source, we have the head, the HTML, the head tags, the doc type, all that stuff. It's being extended from the base template. So let's add Bootstrap to this. So we have our base template. Let's grab the Bootstrap CDN. Except I'm going to use something called Bootswatch. If you guys have never used this before, if you go to bootswatch.com, they actually have different themes, different Bootstrap themes you can use. I'm going to grab, let's see, I'm going to grab the Cosmo. So if I just hit download, it'll take us to the actual generated CSS, which you could copy and you could put in your own file, but I'm just going to grab the URL and go ahead and use that. So I'll go right, let's see, we'll go right below the title here, and let's put in a link and paste in that link there. Alright, and then I also want the JavaScript that Bootstrap needs. So if I go to getbootstrap.com, get started, we're going to grab the 3 JavaScript dependencies. We're going to put that right here. Bring that over. Alright, so now if I go back to our application and reload, now it's using Bootstrap. Okay, so now that we did that, let's create a navbar. So I'm going to go to my templates, and the navbar I want on every single page, so I'm going to create a new folder here called inc for includes, because I want anything that should be included inside of another template should go in here. So let's create a file called navbar.html.twig, and let's just go ahead and create a navbar. So it'll have a class of navbar. We'll say navbar expand -sm, navbar dark, and let's do bg-primary, and let's do mb3, which is just a margin bottom class. Okay, so inside here, let's put a container, and we're going to want this to be responsive, so we want to have a hamburger menu. So we're going to have a button here with the class of navbar toggler, and let's give it a type button, and we want to give it a data toggle attribute. This is just standard Bootstrap of collapse. We also want to give it a data target so it knows what to open when we click it, and we're going to give it an ID of mobile-nav, and that could be anything you want. Inside here in the button, we want to have a span with the class of navbar-toggler-icon, and that's it. That'll give us that icon. And then down here we'll have a div with the class of collapse, navbar collapse, and let's give it an ID of mobile nav. Okay, and that ID should match whatever is right here, whatever the data target. And then we can put our links, our UL. So the UL will have a class of navbar-nav. Let's also give it a class of ml-auto. That'll align it to the right. And then we'll put in our links. So the LIs have a class of nav item. And then the A tags have a class of nav link. And this is just going to go to slash. And this will be home. All right, so we'll copy this. And let's change this one right here to slash article slash new. And this isn't going to work yet, but I just want to get it in there. And we'll say new article. All right. So let's save that. Now that's not going to show up obviously because we need to include it. So the way that we do that is let's go to our base HTML Twig file, because we want this to show on every single page. So what we'll do is go right below the body tag and right above the body block and include it. So to do that, we want double curly braces, and we can simply say include from the ink folder. We want navbar.html.twig. And let's save that and reload. And now we have our navbar. Oh, I forgot the brand or the logo. So that should go, let's see, that should go right above the button. So we'll have an A tag with the class of navbar brand. And we'll just have that go to slash. And in here, let's just say Symph art. There we go. And then I also want a container around the main content. So in our base, where we have our block body, let's just wrap that in a container. So we'll go ahead and just bring that up. All right. Good. So we'll save and reload. And now that moved over. So let's see, that should do it for our base and the navbar. We can close those files up. Now in our controller where we rendered the Twig template, we can pass stuff into the template from the controller, just like with just about any framework. And we can do that by sending an array as a second parameter. So we can say array, and then let's say we wanted a value called name, and we'll set that to Brad. All right, so now in the view, in the index, because that's what we're rendering here is the index, we could say, just as an example, I'll say my name is, and then double curly brace name, and save and reload, and we get my name is Brad. So that's how we can pass stuff into the view. Now we're going to want to pass in our articles to the index, because this is going to be an index of articles. Now we haven't dealt with the database yet, so just to give you kind of just a simple idea of how this works, like we could create a variable called articles, just set it to an array. We'll say article 1, article 2, and then we'll pass that in here. So we don't need name. We'll say articles, and then we want to pass in that variable. All right, so now if we go to our index, we basically want to loop through our articles and display table rows, right? So let's create, yeah, we'll go ahead and let's first of all do an if statement to see if there are any articles. So with Twig, we can simply do if articles, and we can do an else. I really like the Twig template engine. So else, and then we can just do end if. Alright, so if there's no articles, so in the else, let's just put a paragraph and say no articles to display. And if there are, then we want a table. Let's give it a class of table and a class of table striped. Let's do a heading, so we'll do a T head. Oops, we'll do a T head with a table row. Some THs, so we'll say article title. And then the second TH is just going to be our actions, which will be the buttons. And then the next thing we want to do is put in our T body, and the TRs, the table row, is what we want to iterate for each article. So let's put our loop here. So we'll say for article in articles, and then we just want to end that, so we can say end for, and then in here for each article we want to generate a table row, and we'll have a TD with the title, and we can get that with article. Alright, later on it'll be an object, so it'll be like article.title, but right now it's just a regular array. Okay, and then for now, I guess we could put in, let's just do like just the show link or the show button. So we'll do an A tag with the class of btn, btn-dark, and this will ultimately go to /article/ and then the ID, which will be dynamic, but right now I'm just going to put a 1, and we'll say show. So let's save that and see what we get. And there we go. So it's what it's doing is it's passing in this, which is just hard-coded data, and it's passing it in here, and then we're looping through those two articles, and we're outputting table rows for each one, and it has the title and it has the show button. Okay, so now I think this is a good place to stop, and in the next video what we'll do is we'll start to get into the database. So we're going to use something called Doctrine, which allows us to easily interact with the database. We'll also work in the console a little bit to do things like create the database, and we can also run queries and stuff like that. All right, so hopefully you guys are enjoying it, and I'll see you in the next